Confirm live.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Performance Management Scrutiny Committee. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public are able to hear and view the papers. The papers will be displayed during the broadcast of the meeting. This meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any any member of the committee experience technical difficulties during the meeting, they should immediately contact the telephone number provided. Councillors are requested to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. The chat function may be used to indicate the desire to speak. As chair, I will interpret the council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of remote participation, with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making a ruling. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of the committee to confirm their presence and any interests. I will ask everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of the committee, portfolio holders and other members or officers, to introduce themselves before they speak. Before we start the meeting, I just want to say, obviously this is the first meeting without Julie Files, who was an absolutely lovely lady, and she died quite tragically a few weeks back. And I think it's probably appropriate for us to write as a committee and offer our sincere condolences to her family. And I think it would be respectful if we just had a moment to think lovely thoughts about all the happy memories we have when Julie was at the council. So I'm going to just give us a minute. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and my thanks also go to all the staff who've helped Julie and helped organising the meetings when she wasn't well, and obviously have taken the baton. So I'm going to start now with item number 1, which is apologies, and we've had apologies from Councillor Hannah Fraser, and David Phasma is substituting for Councillor Fraser, Dave Tremellen, and also Alan Mosley. Are there any further apologies?
No further apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So members are reminded to disclose any pecuniary interest in any of the matters to be discussed, which are not included in the Register of Interests, and leave the meeting prior to the matter being discussed. I'm now going to read out everyone's name, and if they could just confirm they're here and if they have any interests. So my name's Claire Wild, I'm chair of the committee, and I have no interests in any of the agenda items. Joyce.
I'm here and no pecuniary interests.
Right, that's Joyce Barrow. Karen Calder.
Present, no pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Roger Evans.
Present and no pecuniary interest.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, Alan Mosley is not here. Cecilia Motley.
Chair, I'm present. Councillor Cecilia Motley, Corvedale. I have no pecuniary interest, but I would just like to advise you that I will have to leave this meeting at 2:55 p.m. As I have another meeting starting at 3, please.
Thank you.
So I offer my apologies.
Dave Tremellen, he's already apologised. Les Winwood.
Here, Chairman, no pecuniary interest.
Right, thank you. And we've had apologies from Hannah Fraser. David Vasmer.
Present, Chair, and no pecuniary interests.
Right, thank you very much. So,
I think you've missed me out.
oh, sorry, Peggy.
Yeah, Peggy Mulligan, no pecuniary interest.
Sorry, Peggy. I'm
Okay.
sorry. Sorry. Okay, item number 3, minutes. I'm going to move that the minutes of the Performance Management Scrutiny meeting held on the 16th of September 2020, the 15th of December 2020, and the 20th of January 2021 are circulated to be signed as a correct record. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second, Chair, Cecilia Motley.
Right, thank you very much. Is everyone content? If anybody's not happy, would you like to raise your hand?
Chairman, Councillor Roger Evans, can you see
Yep.
my hand?
No, I can't see your hand actually, Roger. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, do you want me to raise the hand, or I put my hand up, but do you want me to raise the yellow hand? Is that what you're
Well, it's
meaning?
all right.
Sorry.
Yes, carry on, Roger.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. There are some actions outstanding on these minutes. When will we review these, or when will we be notified of them?
Okay, so what things in particular do you mean, Roger?
On the minutes of the 16th of September, on page 10, it says in there's 2 paragraphs up from resolved. It was agreed instead to include a section on the performance report focusing on and to include a bit more narrative of some emerging themes. Has that been agreed? And then right at the bottom, it says members noted, in response to concerns about the content of the minutes, it was agreed for the solicitor to discuss with the director and to report back to members. Has it been reported back, please?
Okay, I'm not actually aware that it has, Roger. Have you got any comment on that, Amanda?
I'm afraid I don't know. The solicitor isn't present this afternoon, I'm afraid, so we'll need to provide an update after the meeting on that.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Okay, so the minutes have been moved and seconded. Is everyone in favour? If you have any, if you're against any of the minutes, then could you please use the chat function to indicate, unless you want me to go through the register? No. Okay.
Can I just mention about the minutes, Chair? Is that all right? Councillor Vasmer here.
Yeah.
Just that I'm probably following up what Councillor Evans was saying, but just that I noticed the minutes in December seem to be much fuller than the ones in January. And as part of the report from the solicitor, I'd be interested to know, the criteria that are used for reporting questions in particular.
Okay, I'm sure he or she will come back with an answer for that. I think what you have to understand, David, is that obviously, unfortunately, Julie is no longer with us. So, we have to accept the minutes that were done. And it has taken 2 or 3 people to actually get these minutes to us. So I think Daniel just wants to say something. Daniel?
Hello, Chair. Yes, Daniel Webb here, Overview and Scrutiny Officer. I just want to confirm that what you've noted there, Chair, is absolutely correct. Following the illness and unfortunate death of Julie, the responsibility for these minutes has passed around several officers. We've always enjoyed having a consistent style from an officer who knows the committee well, and unfortunately, due to her death and other pressures, we've had several officers writing these minutes. Sometimes we've had more than one officer writing the minutes for a single meeting. So there will be some stylistic differences, and there will be some differences in the amount of detail that they add there. It's an ongoing piece of work to ensure more consistency across the minutes, but when you've got different people writing them, you will see stylistic differences. So I think in terms of what information is included in there, that's very much down to the discretion of the clerk taking the minutes, and then that explains why there is some difference in the style and in the content.
So can I just ask Councillor Vasma, shall I just move a vote on the minutes or?
Yeah,
Pardon?
that's fine. That's fine. I'm quite happy with that explanation. That's fine. Thank you.
Right, okay. Roger, do you want to just say something before we move on?
If I can, Chairman, have we any idea when the December, I think it's the December minutes we're short of, isn't it? Sorry?
It says in the paperwork that the December minutes are there, I think, Roger.
Can you tell me where they are? I've got the September and the January minutes.
Well, it says here 16th of September, the 15th of December and the 20th of January 21.
Where?
They're on the website, Roger.
Okay, but have they been sent out for papers with this meeting? And they haven't been sent out, as far as I'm aware, for the papers for this meeting. I've got agenda item 3, which is the 16th of September. And then this morning, we had the 20th of January. And in the agenda, it says the 15th of December to follow.
Right. Well, according to the committee officer, the December minutes are actually on the website.
Have they been circulated with the agenda? It says to follow on the agenda.
Hello, Chair. Can I intervene here, if that's okay?
Yes, you can do. Have they been sent out, Daniel?
Thank you. Yes, Daniel Webb here, Overview and Scrutiny Officer. It's my understanding that they weren't sent out with the agenda. Do excuse the background noise, by the way. My neighbours are having the house rebuilt, by the sounds of it. But they were published. They were published this morning. And again, we've been working right up to the wire to get these produced to you. So they weren't sent out with the agenda papers. They were circulated this morning and placed onto the website this morning. We can only apologise for the short notice in receiving those.
So I'll ask you the same question as I asked Councillor Vasma, Roger. Do you want to put this to the vote, or are you content?
I'm sorry, Chairman. I have not received the December minutes. They were not circulated this morning, as far as I'm aware. The 20th of January was circulated this morning, and I had the email telling me they were there. I have not seen any circulation concerning the December minutes. So how am I supposed to know they've been put on the website if I've not been informed?
Hold on a minute. Let's just get some clarification from Amanda. Amanda,
I'm here, Chair. The both sets of minutes should have had automatic notifications sent out when they were added to the web this morning. Councillor Evans is saying that the notification for the December minutes didn't go out. I don't know if other members received it, but if that's the case, I can only apologise, but they were there ready for confirmation at this meeting. I don't know if other members have had a chance to look at them.
Well, okay, so can somebody check whether the notification went out? And in the meantime, I'll come back to this item number 3, the minutes. And we'll just carry on and come back to it when somebody's got some clarification. Is that all right?
I'm not able to check that myself, I'm afraid, while we're in the meeting, but if a member could do that, that would be great.
Cecilia, could you do that for me while we just move on to the next item?
I'll try to, Chair. I'm slightly, my internet is jumping up and down at the moment. It might be safer if somebody else did so.
Okay, what about you, Joyce? Do you want to, Joyce, can you check?
I am looking on my iPad as we speak, see if I can see.
Hello, Chair. I can just, sorry, Daniel Webb here, Overview and Scrutiny Officer again. I can confirm that the December minutes are on the website on the page for this agenda.
Right, so the notification went out this morning.
It should have gone out this morning, so it's an automated process.
Yes, I've got them.
Who's saying that? Is that Peggy?
Peggy.
Peggy. Okay, so the notification did go out this morning. So what I'm going to do for item number 3 is I've proposed the minutes. Who seconded me? Was it Joyce or Cecilia?
It was me. It was Cecilia.
Right, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a roll call and see what everyone says. So, okay.
Chairman, it's Councillor Roger Evans. Okay. Yeah. I'm on the intranet.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the agenda for today's meeting. Yeah. And it's got agenda front sheet, agenda report back, minutes of the 20th of January 21. And my apologies, it does say the minutes of the 15th of December. Yeah, it does say on that. I'd missed that earlier on, so my apologies to officers.
Oh,
So do you still want to vote, Roger, or are you content to?
No, the minutes are there. I would have appreciated earlier notification because I haven't had a chance to actually read it. I only got home half an hour ago. But yep, okay, they are
Right.
are there. They are there.
So nobody's saying that we should have a vote on the minutes. They've been accepted by everybody, so that's good. So
Chairman.
moving on. Sorry,
Chairman,
yes.
I'm sorry, Cecilia Motley, I just wonder if I could just say
Yeah.
that actually I do think what we've all got to understand is the fact that the committee officers have been under huge strain, not just due to the death of Julie Files, but also because an awful lot of meetings are being crammed in at the moment, which they're expected to service in a very short period of time due to the fact that we're going forward to an election. And I just feel that yes, it's very important that we should have our minutes, but at the same time, I do think we need to acknowledge publicly and just offer our thanks to the committee officers for having worked so very hard. I know Amanda Holyoke has been absolutely going at this until 10 o'clock at night. And I think that we need to thank our committee officers for doing that. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. So Joyce, you wanted to say something, and then
Yes, sorry, I put a message up for you, Chair. I wondered whether we could actually have maybe a 10-minute break. I know we've only just started, but so that Roger can read those minutes.
right. Do you want to do that? Then we'll stop for 10 minutes while you read the minutes, Roger.
If the meeting is happy with that, then yes, please.
Okay, so we'll have a 10-minute break, and you can read the minutes. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Roger Evans, Chairman, if you're there. Thank you.
Right, here we go. So, Roger, are you happy now? You've read the minutes.
Yeah, as far as I can see, yes. I've got a few follow-ups from the minutes, but as far as the accuracy goes, yes.
Yeah, okay. So everyone's agreed that we accept the minutes.
Great.
No dissent. Okay, thank you very much. So item number 4 is public questions. There are no public questions. Item number 5 is member questions, and there's no questions from members. So we're on to item number 6, which is the Q3 financial monitoring report. So if I could ask James Walton to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. James Walton, I'm the Council's Interim Executive Director of Resources. So I'll give a very quick introduction to the Q3 financial monitoring report. So this is the report that was produced through to using information through to the end of December 2020, extrapolated forward to the end of the financial year, and it picks up both revenue and capital in relation to that overarching position. In terms of revenue, it is projecting an overspend by the end of the year of £838,000, and that's on the back of significant work that's been undertaken to manage and balance out a number of pressures over the year. Obviously, we've been managing the COVID-19 outbreak and significant levels of funding and pressures that have come through the council's books over that period of time. The graph 1 on the top of page 4, page 16 in the pack, shows the way in which the projections each of the quarters has progressed as the year has gone by. For those of you that can see the report in colour, there is a green banding, which is the kind of the safe area that's considered. That's what's allowed for within our general fund balance. So if an overall and underspend falls within that green banding, which is approximately just over £1 million either side of the gross budget figure, if it stays within that green zone, then we're comfortable that we can manage that within our day-to-day or year-to-year management of the financial position. And you'll see from that graph that the first quarter, it was actually just outside of that. It then grew as we got to September, but then with management action has been brought back down into that green zone by Q3. The table in section 4.2 shows the various unders and overspends against each of the main service areas of the council. Some very large variations in there. Draw attention to the children's services overspend, which we know is as a result of the cost pressures, particularly over this particular financial year, in relation to looked after children, social worker costs, agency costs within the service area. There's also been overspends in places like the Place Directorate and also in Finance, Governance, Insurance. Part of that has been specifically in relation to the COVID-19 implications, loss of income, implications for particular service areas over the lockdown. Those overspends are shown there. The grant that covers some of those overspends is shown within the corporate budgets figure, which is why that's a significant negative minus credit figure, if you like, which helps to balance out those overspends in other areas. And I should say that's also the case with some of the children's services spend as well. So some of that grant is shown within those corporate budgets to offset that. Within the document at paragraph 4.6, there is a breakdown of the £207 million of grant that has come through the council's books for a number of initiatives over the COVID-19 lockdown periods. So obviously the biggest one of those was the small business and retail, hospitality and leisure grants that were given out over the summer of last year, but there are some significant numbers there in relation to those particular grants. Table 2 further down then just breaks down the savings that have been delivered this year. So out of £18.7 million worth of savings, just over 10 million of those have been delivered, and that is quite an achievement for officers within the authority, given that those savings were delivered over a period not only of kind of reacting to the lockdown and COVID, working from home, but also that change in the kind of the overarching environment over this year, which meant that there was some difficulty in delivering some of those savings. Nevertheless, as at period 9 of Q3, it's about 5 million of savings, which are assumed to be delivered by the end of the year, but that hasn't yet been fully bottomed down. So within some of the assumptions, as shown in table 3, if those amber rated savings, that 1.5 million was not delivered, then that would clearly increase the overspend from 800,000 to 2.4 million, and that would take us out of the green zone. So it's about managing that final push in relation to those savings delivery. All of that then is summarised on page 28 of the pack, or page 16 of the report, which then shows the general fund balance, the balance we hold as an authority to manage variations and risk. That's £13.5 million. So this overspend would be offset against that, and we still leave £12.7 million in that general fund balance. The rest of the report then, there's a section in relation to the capital programme demonstrating the £73 million within the capital programme. That figure gets revised, and a lot of that, the capital programme that existed at the start of the year was reprofiled into later years, again purely because of delivery complications and issues over the last financial year. On the back of COVID-19, so as a result, just under half of the programme has been delivered, over 75% of the year gone by the end of December. The report then goes on to talk about the detail within the capital programme, and then the detailed variances in relation to the revenue unders and overspends within service areas. So this was taken to Cabinet and approved. This is the same document that went to Cabinet, so the recommendations there relate to Cabinet. For Performance Management Scrutiny Committee, it's the opportunity to ask any questions or consider any of the issues. The recommendation then would be to approve the report on that basis. But happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you, James. I wanted to ask you some general questions about children's services. Obviously, our numbers have gone up a lot because of COVID. So it's two questions really. The one is the extra money, extra expense we incur by having more looked after children during COVID, is that all paid for by the government? And also, is this, across the country, has everyone across the country seen the same sort of increase? And Karen's not here. I did have a look. She's not here, so I don't know if you can answer that, James.
Yeah, I can answer that to a degree. Obviously, I can't give you the detail, but fundamentally, we know that there have been pressures within children's services anyway, and over the last financial year, obviously with the schools being locked down early early in the year. What that led then to was a kind of a suppression of the usual kind of flow in and out of the service that you would normally see, and that then started to come. You started to see that surfacing as we got to the summer and autumn period. So we have seen increases in looked after children. We have seen some complicated cases come through, and we don't expect that to disappear anytime soon. There is a question mark about how much of this is yet to be surfaced, exactly what it is going to mean for the next financial year, but for the years beyond that as well. In terms of other authorities, yes, we've seen similar pressures in other authorities that have come through over the year. There's variations between whether adults or children's are their key concerns, and it does seem to shift between those two. But yeah, there's definitely some correlation with other authorities in relation to that. We have looked at those costs, and there are a degree of those which we believe we can absolutely direct at the lockdown and is additional to the normal kind of levels or turnover that we would see within that service area over, you know, what we would call a normal financial year. So on that basis, we have been able to charge some of those costs directly to the unring-fenced COVID-19 grant from government. So there's an element of that that's been included there and goes into those returns back to government on a monthly basis. But while that's covered, nevertheless, we're still showing that pressure within children's services, because that's fundamentally where it sits. The grant is, although it's charged to it, the grant is being shown within those corporate areas.
Okay, thank you, James. So does anyone want to ask any questions? I haven't got anybody on the chat function yet. Oh, Roger. Yep. I want to ask a question, Roger.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. First question is the question I asked at the Cabinet meeting, and that is on page 44 of this report. I'm not sure where it is, the pack, because I haven't printed it out. I was using the pack I had for the Cabinet. On page 44 of this report, it talks about the SALEX funding for LED lighting, and I'm unsure if we're taking that up, whether we're using it, or whether it is now cancelled or not, reading that report. And if one looks at the highways operations on page 36, it does state there that the saving that was from the LED street lighting has not been achieved, and it's worth about £250,000 of saving wasn't achieved because the because the LED street lighting has not been pursued previously. So there's the loss on the revenue that was incoming, and there's the capital there. I'm not sure, are we spending money from our capital or using the SALEX loan? I did ask the question in the Cabinet. I was promised a reply. I've received nothing. And I've got two more questions after that, Chairman. Okay,
Chair, I'm happy to respond to that if that's helpful. James, in terms of the street lighting project, I think it was referenced at Cabinet that while the replacement of the actual lanterns themselves is something that can be undertaken, the actual cost of replacement of the street lighting columns is what increases the cost. As part of the programme, what we do look to do is to utilise the funding that we have available in an order which is at most advantageous to the authority. So there will be a number of things where we will apply the grant, we will apply capital receipts, or we may push a loan back to later years. If we've only got a certain amount of expenditure that's been incurred, we will use the kind of the free funding first before we start incurring the funding that's going to cost interest or repayment or whatever it might be. So there will be an element of that. The actual delivery of the programme itself, I can't comment on. We'd need to go back to the Highways Division to get that detail. But what we're reflecting within this is the cost of the service, the cost that's actually been reflected, and the element that's being talked about here that I think Councillor Evans is referring to is around the funding. So while you're shifting the funding around and reprofiling that doesn't in any way impact on what the actual spending of that was. So I think it's a separate question in relation to what's been spent. It's a completely different and in some ways irrelevant question in terms of how that is funded, because that's purely about the financial mechanics. And I think Councillor Evans is coming from the point of view of delivery of the programme.
If I can, Chairman, as a follow-up, on page 44, it says, and this was a council policy which was adopted with the Salix loan. It was loudly promulgated throughout, and press releases done it. It says remove Salix loan funding associated with the now on hold street lighting LED conversion, and then it lists three amounts which adds up to 1.5 million. So has that loan now been removed? We're not taking it on or not? That's the question as regarding this one. Are we doing street lighting conversion? Are we using the Salix loan or not?
Yeah, James.
So, thank you, Chair. James Walton. I think all I can say is, without being pedantic, we are saying within this report that we're removing the loan funding associated with the programme that is on hold. It's not saying that the entire programme is on hold. It's not saying that all of the expenditure that was going to be incurred will be incurred. It's saying that the element that the Salix funding was applied to, that element that is on hold, that funding has been removed. Unfortunately, I can't give you any more details about what the actual programme is. All this is doing is reflecting the funding of the element that's been taken forward. I'll have to take the question back to the Place Directorate and ask them to give you a response.
Through you, Chairman, that's essentially what I'm asking is, it says remove the Salix loan funding. So are we taking up the Salix loan funding or not? That's the question I am asking, because I can't understand that, given the understanding that I had from other council press releases and everything like that. So that's what I'm saying is that we are now not going to use the Salix funding. Whether it goes ahead or not is another question. I understand that. This one is about the Salix funding.
Okay, just a final point on that, if I may, Chair. Only last week I signed off an application for another several £100,000 worth of Salix funding. So I know that we are continually applying for funds and using those in different ways. As I say, I'll need to get the details.
I'm sorry, Chairman, this is specific to the LED lighting. That's what this section is about. The Salix loan funding associated with the now on hold street lighting. So it's that money there to do with the street lighting. Are we using Salix for it or not?
So I don't get your point really, Roger. Let me just ask James this question. I mean, or perhaps you. Are you trying to ask whether we're borrowing the money from Salix or the council money? What's the point of the question?
Yeah, it's essentially that, Chairman. It's something that I've been trying to do for the last 5 years, to convert the LED lighting, and then with loud publicity, it was said 18 months ago that the council had negotiated a loan from Salix at 0% to be repaid back over 3 years, and we were starting to replace the LED lighting. What this says is that we are not taking any loans from Salix to replace the LED lighting. Okay, that's another question for somebody else, where the funding is going to be done. So this one is quite definite to me. It says remove Salix loan funding associated with the now on hold street lighting. And all I'm asking, a simple question, is that correct? We're not using Salix funding for LED street lighting now.
Okay, yeah, okay, I get that. I get that question. So what I suggest is perhaps, James, could you ask one of your staff, because it's a fairly yes or no question, isn't it? Could you ask while we're carrying on with the debate if they can just give us a definitive answer? I mean, I don't really understand why it's so important where we're getting, you know, which pot the money comes out of. I think the important thing is we're doing the LED lighting.
We're not, Chairman. That is the point of it. It was stopped. It started April last year and it was stopped after 5 weeks. And we have not recommenced it yet. I'm being told we're going to recommence it in the new financial year. So we've been 11 months not doing it. But that's another question.
That's another question.
I'm not asking James for that one. Yeah, I'm not asking James to answer that one because that is highways. What I'm asking is the funding for the street lighting. Are we use Salix or not?
Okay, and I'm sure James will get the answer to that. Yeah, I mean, a question I'd be asking, Roger, is though, you know, because of the COVID restrictions, has that actually impinged on the delivery? Because that seems a more logical question.
The LED street lighting was in progress during the first lockdown, and a person who commenced working for Shropshire Council and worked for Shropshire Council for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, took it upon himself to cancel the programme, query it, and in Hanwood, which is one of my villages, it was being phased in. So I've got half the village converted to LED lighting, the other half not. He cancelled the programme after a month. He then left the council and it has never been picked up ever since. The LED street lighting replacement programme came to a full stop. But that is highways and nothing to do with James. All I'm asking is this funding, is it still there or are we using other funding?
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, okay. And essentially, I presume, you know, Shropshire Council is committed to LED lighting. That's a fact. But anyway, James, yes. So we're going to move on to David Vasmer's question. Oh, no, Joyce is next.
I've got two other questions, Chairman. I'll come back later.
You already had the first one. Okay, go on then, Roger.
Okay. Next question is the shopping centres on page 35. Looking at that, what sort of return has the council had for the £53 million that it invested in the shopping centres? I'm unclear looking at those two, what the return is on the shopping centres themselves, excluding any development monies or anything like that. So return on the rental minus the service charge. Have we got a positive return and how much is it according to this, and what is the prediction for the end of March?
There you go, James. Is it actually in the report, the figures, Roger, or not?
There are two sets of figures, and it's Shrewsbury Shopping Centre's commercial sites, Shrewsbury Shopping Centre development sites. Now it's the commercial one that I'm really looking at. There is investment going in, and I understand that, and that may be coming out of a separate pot. What I'm saying is, what sort of income has the council had from the shopping centres when it was being predicted we should get £2.5 million when they were initially bought? So it's in comparison with that, and we are a scrutiny committee. We bought the shopping centres, and I know that times have changed, but I'm just would like to know for the end of March what our prediction is for the commercial income from the shopping centres.
So you've asked two questions there, Roger, just for clarity. So the first bit I get is you want to know the percentage return on the investment, which is, you know, fair enough question. But then you're asking about the predictions that we had for the income. You're asking something about that as well.
No. When we bought the shopping centres, it was bought under the policy that was in at that time. It was 10% gross, 5% net is what we were going to get for any investment.
Okay, so that's what you're asking.
Centres, so I'm asking what sort of
what you're asking.
Have we or will we get by the end of this March? What is the prediction?
Right. Okay, I get that, James.
Okay, so in relation to just to kind of explain the way the figures are put together, we've split the shopping centres into two arms, the commercial sites and the development sites, as pointed out by Councillor Evans. The commercial sites effectively relates to the Darwin Centre, and that is the centre that has continued to operate as a shopping centre over this period, and obviously was impacted by the flooding and the kind of the fallout from that just ahead of the lockdown. So when you go into this financial year, footfall in all shopping centres around the country was significantly reduced. So that element, which is the part of the shopping centre that is going to continue as a kind of commercial site, it's probably not the right term, but nevertheless will continue as a retail centre. What the information is showing there is the expectation is that there will be a net income of £486,000 by the end of the year. Now that is nearly the best part of £200,000 down on the estimate for the year. That said, I think we need to bear in mind that this is a commercial offering. It was not eligible for the sales fees and charges grant in relation to COVID. Obviously, a number of those shops were locked down. A number of shops have gone out of business over this period. Nevertheless, we received getting close to £500,000 worth of income over the year for that centre. Now, in terms of the return on the 50 million, well, obviously the 50 million was that rough figure paid for the three shopping centres, not just for that one commercial arm. So it would be inappropriate to apply that 500,000 against the 50 million pounds and say that's a very small percentage delivery. The development centres are effectively relates to the other two sites, so the Pride Hill and the Riverside shopping centres, and this really goes back to the powers under which we purchased the shopping centres in the first place, which was for economic regeneration purposes. So what that nevertheless shows is that there has been a £1.2 million return on that. Now, there's been a number of ways in which that's been pulled together, and those are identified within the report. But clearly there was an element of that which was about ensuring that there would be there was external grant that was going in and other ways of kind of financing that particular area over that period. So the 1.2 million again is a few £100,000 down on the original budget that was set, and that budget, if you take those two budgets together, 1.5 million and just under 700,000, so that's just under, so around about £2.1 million level. That 2.1 million is the figure that's comparable to the figure that Councillor Evans mentioned earlier. So it is down on the 2.8 that we'd originally envisaged when we purchased the shopping centres, and also there were income targets, savings over and above that, which was set much earlier in the process before we saw the change in retail, and we saw the impact of lockdown in the last financial year in particular. Obviously, the valuations of those shopping centres have also shifted significantly, so the return on investment is a difficult figure to calculate, and in a sense, there's not a lot of value to be derived from kind of arbitrarily separating out the relative values of those centres and then looking at the return over this particular period. The point I would bring us back to is, with the 486,000 in the commercial and the 1.2 in the development, we're talking about 1.7 million pounds worth of income, net income into the council, regardless of the budget. 1.7 million income into the council that would not have come in had the shopping centres not been purchased several years ago.
Right.
I'm lost, Chairman. I'm
James.
lost. So
I mean, I think, Roger, I think what James is saying is that basically they've split the centres into three. A third of the centres is the bit that's creating the income. And the bit that you want to really know is the income has dropped a little bit, but actually not as much as I would have thought. So actually, I think they've done quite well on returning the 1.6 million to the council. So, Roger, you said you were lost.
I'm lost. We bought shopping centres, and for the first 2 years, there was an insurance premium paid, and with a guarantee of income from those shopping centres. That insurance was there for the first 2 years and used to top up. What I'm asking for is the return that we have had from the shopping centres. Development income, I can't understand that. Where has that income come from development? We bought shopping centres with shops in them, giving us a income in rental, and we provided the service. So that to me is the commercial sites that were there. The council is now investing money and altering the sites. I understand that. So what I'm asking for is the commercial income from the sites or the shopping centres that we bought. And I think James answered that when it's £486,000 is the income the council has received from the commercial sites. Development, I just don't understand where that income is. That fresh money, new money, or is that grant money, or what? I wasn't sure. But it's the commercial income is what I was wanting, because that was the selling point, if you want, for members to actually get the shopping centres. And I understand we're in a different era now. I just wanted to get a return on what sort of money the council is getting from these shopping centres.
But I think it's a bit like looking at apples and pears, Roger, because they're not the same thing anymore. I think that's the point James was trying to make. We bought the centres, left them as they were for 2 years, collected the income, and any deficit was made up by the policy. And then we decided to change it all, and we've closed certain parts. So you can't compare the two, really. It's apples and pears.
Yeah. But anyway, Chairman, if I can go on to my last question, if you want to. Right. And that is that James talked about table 3, the effect of non-delivery of Amber savings. I understand we've got the quarter, we receive it in quarters, the same as the Cabinet do, but I understand the directors get a monthly summation of where the council is, where they look at it. So James is saying 838 is the projected variance at Q3, which is what he presented under this. And if we do not make the Amber savings, it could increase. At the last directors meeting, what was the predictions? Are we on target for, I'll say, £1 million deficit, or is it anticipated it will be more? As a scrutiny, I think we need to know this and maybe to pass it on to the new council, whoever sits on it.
I'm happy to answer that, Chair. James Walton here. In relation to the monitoring, Councillor Evans is absolutely correct. It's produced on a monthly basis, so that the executive directors team within the authority can keep an eye on where we are. The last review was at period 10, and although that's internal information, not produced in the same format as this. What I can report is that the projected variance was slightly lower than the £838,000 that's shown within Q3. So while I wouldn't want to start pinning a figure on it's basically an internal report, what I can give some comfort to Scrutiny Committee on is that figure does not seem to be moving away from balance. It's moving closer to it, or at least holding its own. But I would imagine it to be potentially a slightly smaller underspend, a slightly smaller overspend. Let's get that clear by the end of the financial year, based on the latest information.
No, that's good news.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, and if you could just find the answer to the question about that loan, James.
Got an update on that if you want me to come in.
Yeah, if you just let us know while Roger's still on, yeah.
Okay, so the funding was delayed. The programme was delayed, and so the funding was removed from the capital programme to enable the business case to be reviewed, and it goes back to the point I made at the start, which was around the column replacement programme. So the funding would allow for the replacement of the lanterns, but not the significant cost of the columns. Now that has been reviewed, then the project timescale has now been refreshed. The council has re-engaged Salix, and they are still in agreement that they will fund the project against that revised timescale. So we're now looking at a programme which starts from 21-22 through to 23-24. That's a 3-year delivery programme, which will be funded by Salix. What we've done in the current year was what I said from the start. We've just literally shifted the funding in so that we're using capital receipts rather than borrowing, for example, to reduce the financial cost. But basically, a programme is in place 21-22 through to 23-24, 3-year delivery, and it will be using Salix funding to fund that.
Okay, so what essentially I think is being said there, Roger, is that first of all, they were only going to replace the lanterns, and then they decided that they'd apply for a Salix loan to replace the columns as well. So I don't know what you've got, whether you've had just the lanterns done or some lanterns and columns, Roger.
Replacing everything.
Yeah, so that's
that's what the original programme was for, and that's why it was cancelled by this former employee, because that employee, as I understand it, was not in agreement with the cost of the column, columns, which is why he cancelled it or postponed it, whichever. But everything was being replaced because the concrete columns are way past their service life date, and they're having to be inspected because of the iron core is rusting.
Okay, so that's great news. So we're going to get an interest-free grant for the columns and the lanterns. So Joyce, you've got a question.
I've got 2 general questions, actually, not about specifics. I know the general fund balance is below the recommended level at 12.672 million. Would be considered a healthy level? And I seem to recall when we went unitary, which is irrelevant to now, I know, we were under 3 million then and dangerously low. So what would be a healthy balance? And I'll ask the other question as well at the same time, if I may, please, James. How does the projected revenue outturn position, because we've got to know you're projecting overspend of 0.838 million compared to previous years?
Thank you, Chair. So I did miss the start of that question, but I assume you were referring to the general fund balance.
Yeah.
That level, right? Thank you. So yeah, what we do is we risk assess the general fund balance every year, and that goes to full council to be approved. So the value that Councillor Barrow was referring to, the value at pre-unitary, we have to remember that at that point we were a county council, and we were in a completely different regime, and the requirements around general fund balance were set under different legislation. There's now a statutory requirement that the 151 officer undertakes a robustness of estimates and adequacy of reserves consideration, and that completely changes the approach in relation to that calculation. So we undertake a risk assessment every single year, and at the moment we're saying that figure should be higher, not significantly higher, but should be higher in relation to the coming financial year. So I think the figure quoted in the report is £19.2 million. As you then work further forward into the future financial years, then clearly with more risk, with more uncertainty around government funding and requirements around referendum limits for council tax, etc., you expect that figure to go up. So we have a significantly higher figure in later years, which is in the 20-30 million pound sort of categories. That's not to say that we should be putting that level of funding aside in general fund balance. It's saying if nothing changes, that's the level that it needed to be. But clearly, we'd expect things to change because every year we get a funding settlement and we understand what the next year looks like, and we can reassess that figure. In terms of the revenue outturn, £838,000, how's that compared to previous years? In previous years, we've tended to be, from memory, I can probably pull it up in a second and come back to you. But from memory, we've been within around about £1 million under or over for the last few years. I think there was one year, I think it might have been last year, where we had a bigger overspend than was previously anticipated. And there's, from memory, there's one about 3 or 4 years ago where it was a little bit higher as well. But generally, it's been within say £500,000 to £1 million under or over every year. That's what we aim to try and bring us in on. As I say, we focused on that kind of green banding I mentioned at the start. But I will look at them and see what the actual figures were. They went to Cabinet on the 25th of February, but I'll confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. While you're looking for the, do you want a minute to look those figures up, James? Or
carry on, I can do it in the background.
Well, okay. Well, you've got 2 more questions here. Yeah, right. David Vasmer, you've got 2 questions.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got a question on page 29 of the original report and page 41 of the pack. There's analysis of the overspend on children's services and looking at the external residential placements budget and the fact that we've appointed a commissioning and contracts manager. And it says on top of page 29 or 41 that the post successfully managed to generate significant savings in 1920, and these savings will be considerably higher in 2021 financial year when we get the full year effect. Do we know exactly what the figures are? Because obviously it's quite a significant area, this, and obviously it's an initiative which is is a good one, but it'd be interesting to know what savings have been made.
So if I come in on that, Chair, I don't have that detail, but that should be a reasonably simple question. I can take that away and get that information and send it through to Councillor Vasmer or to the committee if they wish to see it.
Yeah, I think if you send it to the whole committee, that would be better, James.
Yeah. Okay.
I've just got one more question, Chair.
One more question. Right. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. On page 33 of the original report and 45 of the pack, there's reference on Director of Place about the cost centre holds the unachieved contract management savings, the Directorate totalling 0.156 million. What are those contract managements? What are they relating to? Which contracts are we talking about?
Okay, sorry, yes. Sorry, Chair James Walton. So the area of the budget there we're talking about, Director of Place. This is obviously a kind of a summary admin, senior management element of the budget rather than the service delivery. What we looked at 2 years ago now, I think it was to put a programme in place for contract management savings. It was about, I think it was £1 million over 3 years, 300, 400. So this will be year 2, and the second 300,000. Those were then an exercise was undertaken to see which contracts, contract management savings could be applied against which contracts. Clearly, some contracts are renewed, some contracts are expected to increase. Other areas can be considered for savings. So across the entire Place Directorate, a target was applied of 156,000. That is showing against that Director of Place element here. It actually relates to contracts across the whole of the Place Directorate, and what that's basically saying is that 156,000 has not been achieved in terms of that contract management savings across the board. Had they been, I need to go back and check what the actual target was for Place. But let's just say the target was 160, then 4,000 would have been achieved. That would be showing against the individual service area, and the balance of unachieved is showing against that line there. Apologies for my dogs barking. So it's just a holding place while those are delivered across the year. Clearly, they have not been able to deliver 156,000 as we get this close to the end of the year, and they would have been flagged as the red savings and carried forward into next year, whereby that figure increases with the next tranche, and that would all be considered as part of the contract management savings for there. So I can't give you an answer in terms of which contracts. It will be applicable to whichever ones were due for renewal over that year.
Chair, if I can just come back, if that's okay, just quickly. Yeah, I think you said that it was the second year of a three-year program. So presumably next year will be the next financial year. We actually will be able to do assessment of if it is not being achieved, why the reasons for that, presumably.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think we looked at this before, David. I think that it's something that we were quite keen on, because we do need somebody specifically to look at contracts. You know, it's quite common, and there are savings to be made. So yes, we can have a look at that if we're all here next time.
Great, that'd be fantastic, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to. Is everyone happy?
Chair, if I may, I can just come back on Councillor Barrow's question. The 2019-20 figure was a £1.7 million overspend. The year before that, it was 167 under, 613,000 under the year before, 894,000 under in 2016-17, 2.8 million under in 15-16, and 300,000 under in 14-15. So to summarise, since 14-15, we've delivered an underspend at the end of the year between 300 and 2.8 million, and last year was the anomaly where we had a £1.7 million overspend at the year end.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, James. So I'm going to propose that we note this report. Is everyone content with us noting the report? Do I have any dissension?
It's fine, Chairman.
No. Okay. Thank you very much indeed, James. I don't know how you keep all that information in the one place, but there you go. All right then. So thank you very much. So we're moving on to item number 7 now, which is the Q3 performance report. The officer who's going to present the report isn't here, but we have Councillor Lee Chapman to introduce the report. So if I could ask Lee to talk us through. If Lee's there.
help if I unmuted myself, Chair.
Yeah,
So,
I was going to say, I don't know what's happened there. Yeah.
So Councillor Lee Chapman, I'm the Cabinet member that covers this area of the Council's work, and I'm the Councillor for Church Stretton and Craven Arms. So, so this particular report covers the period from the 1st of October to the 31st of December 2020. And so it's set in context in part during a period of lockdown as a result of the pandemic. The purpose of the report is to highlight areas across the 7 key outcome areas set out within the Council's corporate plan and wider performance. And this Q3 reporting covers that period. What I'd like to do is just to pick out a couple of the areas that have been highlighted in the report, and then to the best of my ability I will attempt to answer any questions. So the healthy environment domain features the report from the Childhood Measurement Programme. So this is been published and it's for the year end up to April 2020. Albeit that the programme itself, because of lockdown, was stopped in March 2020. Nevertheless, there is some interesting data there based on measurements of children both at reception, so this is weight measurement, and later in year 6, and there's also then some comparator data. I should point out that the Childhood Measurement Programme doesn't take any information from either special schools or from the independent sector. This is for state schools. And what's clear from the measurement data is that 22% of children at reception are either overweight or obese, and that figure rises in year 6 to 29.7%. Now, there is some comfort given the fact that these percentages are significantly lower than elsewhere, certainly across the West Midlands and across wider England, particularly in relation to the year 6 figures. But it is some concern, and particularly when I'm wearing my Health and Wellbeing Board hat, that we're still seeing that growth, of almost 8%. In between that period of the time that children are spending in school. And so I think that clearly it's cause for concern and something that we need to continue to work towards. You'll be aware that as a result of the lockdown, significant aspects of the cultural offer that the council is involved with were closed down, and as a result, certainly the visitor figures, which my colleague, the Cabinet Member for Culture, is often keen to trumpet. She's unable to do that because the overall figures are obviously significantly down based on the restrictions of socially distancing during the screenings during the period when we have been able to open. This is also true for the libraries, and although during some of the periods when we haven't been locked down, libraries have been open to public, what we have seen, I think, particularly with some of our older residents and more vulnerable residents, is a reluctance to visit the libraries. And so the online offer and the digital offer that the libraries have been making, and also the work that they've been doing, reaching out to people who are housebound and providing them with services and things that they can dial into, has been greatly appreciated. And I think it's important to note, and some members will be aware of this, that on the back of that, the ongoing work that libraries are doing in relation to their transformation programme is now gathering pace. And I was part of a cross-party group of councillors who were invited to feed in their experiences. And I think that it's very encouraging that libraries are looking to reflect and build on their experience of supporting residents, both with libraries but with a much wider offer, and that they'll be factoring that into their transformation programme. Under the domain A Good Place to Do Business, we report on claimant count figures and some figures in relation to furlough. And whilst the claimant counts in Shropshire remain low compared to our comparator local authority areas, it is worth noting that the increase in Shropshire and other rural counties has been significantly greater. And so certainly some of the work that we're involved with partner organisations about some of the ongoing effects of the pandemic on employment rates and on the economy across Shropshire is clearly a significant priority. But I think as we can, certainly as the economy starts to open up again, we will be watching the numbers very closely to make sure that we work with those partner organisations to make sure that people get every support that they can as possible. And clearly the council's been involved in a very considerable and very effectively run programme to provide grant funding that's come through to Shropshire from central government to support people as they struggle with the pandemic. Under the suitable places and communities, I beg your pardon, sustainable places and communities, we feature in this report a focus on adult social care because the comparator data or the ASCOF outcome measures have now been published somewhat later than we'd expect this year. They were published in December 2020 for the year 1920. But I think colleagues will recognise and want me to congratulate on their behalf the considerable performance of adult social care across a range of measures. So across the 23 measures, Shropshire ranked in the top 2 for 82%, over 82% of those. Furthermore, Shropshire was above England and the West Midland region for 15 out of those 23 domains, and some fantastic performance supporting our older population and those people with care and support needs. What I'd also like to highlight is you'll be aware that our performance in respect to direct payments to clients has struggled, and certainly we were aware before this report came out that was work to do around direct payments. And I'm pleased to know, and colleagues who follow the Cabinet papers will know that Shropshire Council has worked directly with those people who receive a direct payment to completely overhaul our policy, and in fact we've in effect co-produced our new policy for direct payments, and that will be effective from the 1st of April 2021. Tremendous piece of work done by the staff and individuals who support those who receive a direct payment to really overhaul the system and to make it very much more appropriate for those people who use direct payments. So some really good work going on there. I think and you'll also note that the Q3 rate for permanent admissions into a nursing home is also better than profile. Given issues that we're aware of around the pandemic, one perhaps shouldn't be overly surprised around that. The domain More People with a Suitable Home provides some very encouraging results emerging out of our Right Home, Right Place survey. We launched these in 2009 specifically to provide local communities with an opportunity to highlight their individual needs for housing, specifically affordable housing within their communities. What that means is that we're now able to look in detail in particular areas, and because we have the evidence of need, we're much better placed to deliver schemes which are appropriate to those communities. So planning stage progress during Q3 to sites likely to be progressed into the spring. We're looking at in Prees 27 affordable A-rate homes, in Whittington a scheme for 24 affordable homes, and also schemes in Western Rim and Harmer Hill. So really good results from that plan that we've put through, looking to best serve those communities with their housing needs. I will just finally touch on the area around Embrace Our Rurality, and given that broadband is within my portfolio, colleagues won't be surprised that I'll take the opportunity to celebrate some of the results of the Connecting Shropshire Broadband programme and just give you a highlight. There's some really useful detail in the report, but when we think back to 2014, only 24% of our properties had access to superfast, and we're now looking in 2021 at 94% of those properties having access to superfast. And I know that colleagues trying to get into remote meetings still have occasions when everything doesn't quite work out right, but for the vast majority of those properties, a massive difference. And given the fact that we've contracted over £32 million of public funding into those contracts, it just demonstrates the success of the local schemes that we've been able to deliver in Shropshire. The final, I beg your pardon, the last but one of the domains that I just wanted to briefly touch on, care for those in any age. I know from discussions that I've had with my cabinet member colleague for children's services, Ed Potter, that we have seen very significant increase in demands for children's services. And in fact, in the year 2021 to date, we've seen a 7% increase in referrals to children's social care, albeit that those referral rates are less than the increase, if you like, in those referral rates is less than our statistical neighbour group. It still represents a considerable challenge to make sure that we best cater to those individual children's needs. And at the top end of the support that we provide, the increase by Q3 of looked after children is now standing at 19% increase when we compare to the previous year. So really demonstrating both the increase in the complexity of cases that are being presented to children's care, children's social services, and something that it's worth bearing in mind is being reflected in all local authorities across the country. But it is a real challenge, and whilst it's not about reducing the number of children that we looked after, it is about making sure that the right children are given the right care and that takes place in a timely fashion. And I know that colleagues will be reassured that our teams of social workers and all of their support officers are working very hard to make sure that those children have that support that's most appropriate. Finally, I'd just like to close with your council, which is the final domain, and just touch briefly on compliments and complaints. Now, whilst I can't always be accused of highlighting this when it looks favourable, but I will highlight the fact that complaints, the numbers of complaints, generally in line with those that we'd expect at this quarter within the year. Albeit that corporate complaints are somewhat reduced, which is good, and also compliments really do make a difference to those staff that work tirelessly to support people. But compliments are now higher for Q3 compared to the same quarter last year, and we're sure that that is reflective of the considerable support that our council staff have been part of as a result of the pandemic. And on that note, I will finish my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed for a very comprehensive report there, Lee. We've got two questions from Councillor David Vasma and one from Councillor Roger Evans. So David, would you like to ask your questions first?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just referring to the Embrace Our Reality section on page 67. There's the table there showing coverage of superfast and also gigabit coverage as well, and rurality. And it was an interesting table indeed. It's great that you know that we have significantly increased superfast coverage since 2013. But there are still places which are little pockets here and there which are still bad, and I hope we're going to keep the efforts going to keep that going up to near 100%. But just looking at the gigabyte coverage, I noticed that if you compare us to Herefordshire, so, which has a similar index of rurality, their gigabit coverage, which of course is crucial for some commercial operations, is much higher. And I wondered whether two things: whether we ought to be giving targets, having targets for gigabit coverage and looking at that much more seriously now. And secondly, whether we ought to be consulting Herefordshire to find out how come they've got such a much higher coverage than we have.
Okay, did you want to do your other question? Yeah.
Yeah, shall I do the second question as well? And then the second question is on page 69, looking at your council, and it said, yeah, I'd just like also welcome the fact that people are obviously appreciative of the work the council staff have done during, particularly, I think, presumably that's a reference to during the pandemic. But also I'm just interested in the percentage of complaints about highways, and in 12.5. It says highways complaints reduced slightly this quarter, but remain a significant proportion of all corporate complaints overall. I'd just like to know the detailed figures on that one, if that's possible, please. Thank you.
That's an easy question. There you go.
Okay. Thank you for your questions, Councillor Vasma. The broadband, I'm pleased that you highlight quite rightly the significant percentage coverage for Shropshire of the 30 megabits per second, which is higher for Shropshire than it is in Herefordshire. You're right to point out that the gigabit coverage is significantly different. The only thing I would point out is, and I can't explain the exact difference, but I will get the information for you and get it back to members of the committee. But we are working hard with a gigabit voucher scheme, which is available for individual businesses to claim and to top up on. And we also have a gigabit voucher scheme for individual premises. And in fact, our top-up voucher that we're offering is higher than any other local authorities are offering. But obviously, we still need those organisations to need the type of coverage that is available through gigabit schemes in order to request that. And perhaps it's just an indication of the level of coverage that people require, as opposed to the fact that we haven't necessarily got it available. But I will definitely come back to you on that. I think it's also worth saying that I feel personally that there is a danger, particularly in some of the information that we've been hearing coming out of government, that there will be a concentration going forward on seeking to fund the faster end of connections. And what I'm particularly concerned about is I'm much more concerned about those people who don't have superfast, and that I think that probably a little bit too egalitarian for some of my colleagues, but I feel that we should be pressing hard for central government, and certainly I have been where I've had the opportunity, for them to make sure that we get to that 100% of superfast before we start investing huge amounts of public money in gigabit connections. You know, there are opportunities, and we've got some good examples of businesses who've benefited from gigabit coverage, but I'd actually like to see more investment going into the rural areas where they have still not got, you know, there's I don't know, I think it's about 1,400 premises across Shropshire that have still not got what we would think to be a good serviceable connection. And I think that's where the lobbying and investment from government should be concentrated. As far as the figures for complaints for highways is concerned, there'd probably be a lot fewer of them if you took the complaints that I've made out but I don't have the accurate figure, I'm afraid. I will get that to you as a proportion of those complaints, and I'll get that back to the committee. Thank you, David.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lee. Yeah, if you send both replies to the committee, that would be really good. Thank you very much. So I think Roger just wants a quick question. I don't think there are any other questions after that.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's in Embrace Our Rurality, and it's to do with Local Transport Plan 4, LTP 4, Plan Version 4. Looking at the graph, which can be accessed off this report, I'm not sure what 100 is, but we were at 75 until September 19, and it then fell from then on down to 50 all the way through. And in the words to do with it, it says, and I'll quote from this page, development of the plan is behind schedule. Work on developing Shropshire Council's 4th local transport plan recommenced October 2020, and an overview of the proposed approach and programme is due to be reviewed by the Place Scrutiny Committee shortly. When will that occur, please?
You won't be surprised to know, Roger, that I don't know the answer.
Well,
I'm not in charge of the Place Scrutiny Committee, but I'm sure that the chair of this committee would be happy to relay your question. Although I think that perhaps Daniel Webb, if I could ask Daniel to come in, perhaps he might be able to help.
Hello, yes, Daniel Webb here, Overview and Scrutiny Officer, and indeed I do support the chair on this committee. I'm just looking through now, my memory's a little hazy for dates, I'm afraid, not my strong point, but I do know that the Place Review Committee received a report from the relevant officers on this, and the purpose of that really was to talk about the initial shape of the LTP4, because they're taking a rather different approach to the LTP4 this time. I won't go into the detail of that at the moment, but the committee noted that report. They raised no concerns with that report, and it was advised that a further report would be sent with a lot more detail into the shape of the LTP4 to future meetings. So as far as I can see from this, irrespective of how that's going to be shaped, that it is happening, and no, the officers expressed no concern of delays in their timetables in achieving that.
That's excellent. Thank you, Daniel. Did you have any other questions for me, Claire?
No, I'm okay. Roger, are you content with that? With the answer to that question?
Yeah, I'm content with it. But as I say, in the performance, it says due to be reviewed. Okay. We are at that stage in the council process when there'll be new committees after May, and it need to be reviewed by that committee. But I think the LTP4 is an important item, and it was just trying to get a handle on where are we, when is it going to be reviewed, and how are we doing with it?
Right. Okay. Daniel, do you want to just come back?
Yeah, Roger will be more than aware, of course, of the way that we develop the work programmes for these committees. I've developed no work programmes going forward because I feel that it's the responsibility of the new committee to set those work programmes. What I am doing is keeping a long list of items to carry over to the new administration, to the committees of the new administration. So for either the first or the second meetings of those scrutiny committees in the new administration, I will be writing up and tabling draft work programmes for those committees to agree. So in answer is like, when will that be reviewed? And the answer is when the Place Committee reconvenes and decides to look at it.
Thank you very much. And can I just say thank you very much indeed, Lee. I don't think you've got any more questions. So what I propose to do is note the report, and I shall move that from the chair. Has anybody got any objection to us noting this report?
No.
No. Okay.
Thanks,
right. Okay, that's no problem. So I think that is actually the end of the meeting. Can I just thank all the staff, Daniel and Amanda, for all their hard work, and hopefully we will I'll see them after May. So take care everybody and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chair.
Bye.